everyone. Welcome to the Outback Packers podcast, the podcast where two mates from all the way across the world have a yarn talking Packers football and the green and gold. I'm Nick Gregory with my co-host Iowa Joe, today joined by special returning guests Mike Kawano and Dan Kotnik for the final episode of the draft series. Mike, you just popped in the middle of the intro. It's so great to see you. Dan, it's so nice to have both of you guys back. Like I just mentioned, this is the final episode of the draft series, and today we're going over the kind of mock drafts and the final scenarios playing out before we get to the actual draft in 2 weeks from now, from when we're recording here. It's a shame that the Aaron Rodgers trade hasn't come through yet and things like that, but I think, seeing how the compensation talk and the leverage thing has kind of developed here, I think we have a pretty good idea of what's going to be available to us this year. So I think it's still a very good conversation to be having. How are you guys doing, and how are you feeling about the draft?
Well, I'm excited for the draft. I'm with you, and everything else around this Aaron Rodgers trade is just like put a bullet in it and let's be done with it, for God's sake. I'm the stuff that came out recently with the fact that they had everything in place. This is what the compensation was. In my mind now, I'm like, I don't care what happens. Don't do it. Do it. Don't care. If you're not willing to give up a second-round pick this year and a first-round next year for Aaron Rodgers, then you don't want him. So then, fine. We'll just move forward with Jordan. I'm ready to go nuclear on it. Just move forward with Jordan Love and put Aaron on the bench.
Well, you know what's even funnier is that even Bakhtiari has come out and said the Packers have the leverage in this situation. They can just let him sit and say, okay, do you want to sit there? We'll pay you to sit there. We're going to be, most likely we're not going to be good anyway. So what the hell? Let's just let it go. And if you don't want to be part of it, fine, whatever. Jets don't want to trade you, whatever. But I did make a Facebook comment on something that if they're turning down that trade, even when the Packers are saying that they're willing to add a 2025 pick to compensate if he only stays a year, then that tells me the Jets are lowballing and they're trying to get away with it. And I'm super glad that Gutekunst has sunk his heels in and said, no, if you want him, you're going to pay up. And so, but I'm ready for it to be done. I did also see a conspiracy theory that the trade's already done, but they're waiting for the night of the draft to have it be finalized so they can have something to talk about. So, which would make complete sense because, they got to have something to talk about. And this would be the first year in like 3 years that they haven't had Aaron Rodgers news.
And Mike, how are you? Oh no. Can't hear.
No!
Oh no.
I can see you, but we can't hear you.
Lip reading. Oh, it's so frustrating. Is it maybe the connection? Or just the drivers?
Mother.
Oh.
Ah!
What? Oh.
We had something.
Fuck this shit.
Yeah.
No, we got it. We had it.
Okay. We're going old school.
Nice. All right, I'll try again. And Mike, how are you?
Not great, but here, I guess. At the very least here. I apologize, whatever background noise is coming through tonight. I blame Jimmy, his voodoo magic stunned Joe, and now it has totally crap shot every computer I have and my mics. So we're going bare ball for this one. But yeah, kind of the same sentiments you guys have. Just ready for it to be over. Kind of like, we were discussing it on the Inside Linebacker show when I was on it a couple of weeks. I know it just released today, but it's hard to do projections on what Green Bay is going to do in the draft, not knowing what the return is for Rodgers at this point, because, whether they do get picks for him this year or it's next year or it's never, whatever kind of thing. It does completely, what their strategy is hinges on. Do they have extra picks? One, extra first, 1 or 2 extra seconds, whatever it is, that's going to affect what the team does. So, like, and obviously, I'm not saying that, like you guys said, I'm glad Groot is digging his heels in. He shouldn't bend his knee at all, either of his knees at all. And honestly, it's like, like we've seen a lot of guys go to bat on this one. Justice Mosqueda, Zach Jacobson, and it's nice that the Lamar talk has been shot down repeatedly, and now their next one is like, oh, there's always Tannehill, and it's like, have fun with that. So,
no kidding.
Yeah.
Could you imagine the Jet fan backlash if the ownership and all that is promising Aaron Rodgers and they end up with Ryan Tannehill? Good Lord.
Yeah, and like, I don't know how much to read into that Charles Robinson report today that, Johnson was put off by Rodgers going on the McAfee show and making his comments and all that kind of stuff. But it's like, you met with the dude in person, like, who cares what he says on the radio? Do you have something from him and stuff? And, but, I'm not an owner and stuff, but it's like, your guys aren't relevant without a quarterback. You don't have a quarterback on your roster. You guys got suckered into the MILF hunter, who like never. I totally thought the Zach Wilson stuff was like an ESPN gag the whole season that he was being touted and stuff. I never understood or saw the infatuation with him. I was just like, okay, he's like a dude running around with his hair on fire kind of thing. But I was like, I don't see a lot of stuff that translates, and it hasn't so far. So, but it's one of those. It's to the point where I'm like, when it happens, it'll happen kind of thing. And for now, it's just like it always has. It's just whatever Green Bay is going to decide to do. So until further news, it's whatever, and we'll just worry about what Green Bay has on their plate and what they end up choosing to do at this point.
Well, this is a special episode with the mock drafts, so I imagine it's going to take us a little bit to get through it all. What do you think? We just dive right into it?
No, absolutely. So,
okay, I got a question started. How many of you guys have trades involved in your mock drafts?
I have one.
So 50%, because I didn't do any trades. I was like, fuck that, I'll wait and I'll just do my normal draft. So all right,
good.
So
I think it's good to get both sides.
Right. I do have to admit that I have 4 mock drafts wrote up, and I'm just now deciding which one I want to use for this. So it's going to be pretty interesting.
Awesome. Well, who wants to go first?
We'll do it round by round. So we'll just start with the first round. Who's going first on their first pick? Well, let's do this. The 2 of you that had trades, was it up or was it down?
I just had my idea of a Rodgers trade.
Okay, so you just got extra picks from the Rodgers trade.
So
okay.
I guess I'll go because for this draft I started with just doing the simulating it as if the Rodgers trade goes through. So using kind of the compensation that's been sort of touted recently. So I traded Aaron Rodgers for a second round this year, number 42, and a first round next year. So going into the first round, and it's kind of apropos that this happened today because I wrote a piece for Wisconsin Sports Heroics today looking at the ESPN draft analytics model and focusing a lot on the Jackson Smith and Jigba situation where it's like he's not going to fall past 12. Like there's no way he falls past 12. So I actually, in the first round, the one trade that I made in round was trading up to pick number 10 with the Philadelphia Eagles. So we swapped first round picks, and I threw in pick 78, which is the third rounder. So Packers fans, no third
rounders.
And so I was able to jump up in the first round and get Jackson Smith and Jigba, which I think that's that's like a no-brainer deal for the Packers to make if that situation comes up.
I can see it, but I could also see him being there at 15 because I was watching the Gold Zone with the Jacobs earlier today, and like it, we kind of talked about in the chat room and what they talked about on screen. This draft is heavy with talent, but there's no top end talent. And while he'd be a great pickup, he's not like that elite style wide receiver that I could see somebody wanting to trade up for when they can pick somebody who maybe doesn't have his, he's got like a high floor, medium ceiling. You could probably pick somebody with a lower floor, but with the same ceiling in the later rounds. But I can see it. The Packers definitely needs, guys in their wide receiver room.
What you're forgetting, Joe, and it's a crucial thing that you're forgetting, is that I'm an Ohio State fan, and I didn't get to have Olave or Garrett Wilson last year, and so I'm taking Jackson Smith-Njigba.
No, hey, that's fair because me and Nick were battling over text earlier that I probably took every Iowa player that's draft eligible, so I completely get it. And I'm not saying it's a bad pick. I'm not going to turn it down either.
So yeah, I think the funny thing about this draft, kind of I've said for a while now, is that because of the lack of top level talent in this draft, it kind of devalues the picks underneath it. And I feel like that range that we're going to be selecting in from even 13 all the way up to like 20 or 25, it really is kind of like a pick your poison. Obviously, there's some prospects who are better than others, but when you account for like needs and things like that, it's kind of, you just got to pick your own guy and you just got to kind of roll with it because the in that range, you're not going to be getting a top shelf talent anyway, besides maybe Bijan. And that's still not everyone's cup of tea in the first round. So I think just if you want JSN, just pick him as you can, and if you get to guarantee that over like the Patriots, even I think you should just go for it.
Right, and like I was saying, I'm not saying it's a bad pick. I just it's kind of one of those that, like, what was it, a couple of years ago with the quarterback draft where there wasn't a top talent, but people were having to take them because they needed them. And I can see that happening a lot with this draft. But I like him. He's got a lot of skills there. I did see one thing, and then Nick, I'll let you go ahead and do your pick. But I think it was friend of show CD Tundervision that said this, that it wouldn't be surprising to see the Packers trade down and collect picks, because the further down in the first round you go, the less the contract is. So you're saving money, collecting draft picks, and filling holes that are on the team with those mid-round draft picks, and even maybe collect a draft pick or two for next year's draft. So I wouldn't be surprised if I saw that also. But Nick, go ahead, and who's your first round player in your mock?
Yeah, so I think it's really funny, Dan. My trade is not for the same pick, but I ended up with almost the exact same compensation. So my trade here is we do a first round pick swap with us and the Jets, 13 for 15. We hand over 24 third and Rodgers, and we get back their second rounder, their top second rounder this year, and the 24 first. I just feel like the Packers are they're still trying to play that game of preparing for the future. And I think that's why Gutekunst has prioritized the 24 first, because they would still want to be in a position where if they're like bad, they can still, theoretically trade up for a Caleb Williams or a Drake May, etc. Because I think, they're just, they're still playing that game. Even in a transitory era, they're still playing that game where they're just preparing themselves for the future and they're looking ahead, and they kind of know what they have in this draft. And I think they're looking ahead already. And it's, I think it's a smart thing to do. It really is a smart thing to do, because that's kind of what this year is about. But anyway, I picked Lucas Van Ness at 13. The way my board fell, like you said, Dan, JSM was already gone, who is my favorite pick probably of the first round. And I just kind of felt not great about picking one of these tight ends in the first round here. And, Miles Murphy was already gone and all the top two tackles were gone. I don't really like Darnell Wright as much to be picking him at 13. And, I think, this is a fantastic pick. It's kind of a very tradesy guy that they want in Green Bay. He has that versatility, not necessarily like a 3-tech, but he can play a defensive end, fill in there, and I think he'll be a great edge once he's developed a little bit. And he really kind of is similar to that Preston Smith mold, a real powerful rusher who the guy he's eventually going to be replacing theoretically. I think a lot of people have penciled in this pick already, but I think Van Ness is a fantastic pick at 13.
I'm not going to complain.
I know you love it, Joe.
And I mean, he's an untapped talent. I think he's a little bit in that Rashawn Gary type mold where he's got all the talent in the world, but he didn't get to showcase a lot of it in college. So if the Packers can bring him in and train him up and get him going like they did Rashawn, then I could see him being, out of this world. Having him and Rashawn being bookends would be devastating. It'd probably be the best, linebacker tandem we've had in a long time, or edge rusher tandem, or however you want to call it.
Probably since Clay Matthews and that one like 3/4 of a season of Nick Perry.
Yeah. Well, I didn't do any trades. I stayed right there at 15. I didn't want to do the logistics of any trades. But I stayed in the same mold. I went edge rusher. But I went back to a college that Green Bay has went to for a while now. So I went with Nolan Smith, edge rusher out of Georgia. The only thing that I see bad about him is he's a little undersized for what the Packers normally have been picking. I think he's in that Clay Matthews mold of size where they were a little undersized coming out, but if he can put on the weight and keep his athletic traits, then he's going to be solid. I mean, the way this draft fell for me, Van Ness was already gone. Otherwise, he would be my pick. Murphy was already gone, so I couldn't go back there. But like we talked about with Mike on our inside linebacker episode, I see edge being a little bit of a major need at this point because you've got Rashawn coming back. When is he going to be back from the ACL? Kingsley was solid for what he was, but you got Preston Smith who's getting older. There's no real depth there. You got to bring somebody in to be a playmaker on top of possibly replacing Preston within the next year or two. So my guy went with Nolan Smith out of Georgia. And the Packers, for some reason, have went with a Georgia player out of in the first round for the last, 2 years?
Yeah.
Might as well continue the streak. It was either that or go with Keely Ringo. I mean...
Oh, no. Please, man. Please, God. Look, Nolan Smith is one of my favorite players in this draft. I think he will be amazing wherever he goes, but to the Packers, I'd have a tough time believing that he's so undersized. He's 10 pounds lighter than Clay Matthews was coming out, and he's also not as good of a prospect as Clay Matthews was coming out. He is a run defender first, and the Packers covet pass rushing, especially in the first round. I mean, look, I think he'll be a good player, but he is more of a project than people think he will be. Even though he was good at Georgia, he is more of a project than people realize.
Oh, there's no doubt about that. But you just said something that kind of makes sense for what the Packers are needing. If they're leaning towards that philosophy, they need to stop the run. And if they can get him to come in,
edge rusher,
that's the way this league is moving to, though. For some reason, the Packers have been selecting the bigger side of edge rushers. But if you look, a lot of guys around the league, they're around 240 to 250 more than they are 275, 280. But if he can play the run and they can develop him better as a pass rusher, then that's an immediate help. Because I don't know about you guys. I don't know about you guys, but I'm getting tired of people running all day long against the Packers. I'm tired of the Jalen Hurts running for 165 friggin' yards against the Green Bay Packers.
Yeah.
So
that's absolutely fair. All right, so second round.
I'm going to go first with my second round. I know I jumped you there, but since you guys did your trades and you have the multiple second rounders and stuff like that, I'm just going to go ahead and jump in with mine. And this is my bias pick. This is my helmet hunting. I went with Sam Laporta out of Iowa. It's an obvious need. They love the kid. He's an athlete, based off his RAS score and his combine and his pro day. He's an athletic freak. I still do kind of question his hands a little bit, but if he gets that could have just been QB play. Iowa's QBs have been pretty shit for the last few years. But if he can fix that, he fits the mold of what Green Bay wants, and I think he'll be a star from day one.
Yeah. Dan, you want to go first? We go next?
Yeah. I'll go next, and it actually kind of works out pretty well that Joe went there because I had two second round picks. With pick 42, I stayed close to home with me again, and I went Dwan Jones, the tackle out of Ohio State, the absolute freak monster athlete, the trained polar bear that is playing tackle for Ohio State. I mean, I picked that literally just because I've seen what he does. He did not allow a single pressure or sack this past year, and he might be a little bit of a raw talent when it comes to the skill side of being a tackle. What you can't teach? His wingspan or how huge he is. That's just you want that in a tackle. So I love that as the thing. And then Joe, you'll love me for this. I picked Sam Laporta at 25 as well. Because
I was thinking there was a pattern going with your picks, and I was trying to think of who would be another Ohio State guy for the second round.
I was like, I gotta switch it up here. They're gonna think I'm just going straight homer. But I mean, everything you said about him is right, and I didn't even click to me until I started kind of researching more about Sam and getting into this, and I'm like, TJ Hawkinson, George Kittle, it becomes a kind of a lineage of Ohio State wide receivers, Iowa tight ends, that's there's sort of something in the water there. And so if Sam Laporta can be even a third or a half of what George Kittle is or Hawkinson, that's an easy pick at 45.
Yeah, absolutely.
I can't complain on it. Now, to your first one, Jones, it's going to be interesting to see because he was 6'8", 374?
Yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
And, I know the Packers did sign Caleb Jones as an undrafted, and he was pretty close to that. So it's going to be interesting to see if Jones would fit the mold of what the Packers do with their draft picks. It's easier to do as an undrafted free agent because if they succeed, you're not out in, you're rolling in it, but if he fails, you're not really out anything. So I'm not saying anything bad against him. I really didn't watch any of him because he was, in my mind, he was outside the parameters, so I didn't think to even consider watching him. But, if he can hit off, that I'm 6'1", 380, and that guy would scare the hell out of me. I'm not scared of much, but if I see that guy running at me, I'm probably going to go fetal. So if it all clicks, and who knows, he may have to drop some weight no matter where he goes. 374 is pretty hefty for an offensive lineman with with what a lot of teams ask their tackles to do, or even if he had to slot inside as a guard, there's a little bit more that he would have to do. So he might have to do some conditioning, maybe lose a little bit of the weight, but you can't teach size, and he's got it.
No, absolutely. I think, yeah, he's one of the guys that I don't think the Packers. He's not a very like Packers type tackle, but I think he has a chance to be very good. So my first pick, like you, Dan, I have 42 and 45. I picked the rising draft favorite, Joe's favorite player in the whole draft, Jonathan Mingo out of Ole Miss. It's kind of a funny one because you see in some
all aboard!
In some of these mock drafts, he's going as like anywhere in between the third round to the fifth round. I think on some boards he's still like in that range, the fifth to sixth round, which I think is like ridiculous. I think the Packers will be all over him. He's a great blocker. He can play all over the field. He's a physical freak like every other Ole Miss prospect. He's just like, I think that. In my opinion, Cedric Tillman is a better prospect, but I think for what the Packers want and need, I think Mingo is the better player to fit that. And I just think, they're both going to be really good. And he has the athleticism to stretch the field as well. I think he ran a 4.43, something like that. He has, I think he's the kind of the prototypical Packers receiver in every way, and I think he'll be great. And for 45, I picked my favorite tight end in this draft, Darnell Washington out of Georgia. There's your Georgia player on the other side. I think at 15, it's a bit rich. I know the guys at PFF love mocking Darnell Washington to the Packers at 15, but I think at 45, I can definitely take that. And I think in a year where we're losing Mercedes Lewis, I think he's a great replacement. Obviously, he won't be as good straight out the bat, but there's no other tight end in this class that has the pure play strength that Darnell Washington has, and it's not even close. So I would love to have him on the Packers.
Definitely love the Mingo. I like I always said during our previews, I never know where to judge to put a guy in a round. I mean, for all I know, with the way Mingo tested, he could be a first rounder. Who knows?
Some people are mocking him in the first round.
Right. So, I mean, spoiler alert, he is in my draft, but not this high, because I kind of went off other people's boards just to see where he would fall. So yeah, I'm all for that, no matter where they take him. Well, except for in the third round. No third rounds. No cursing with the third rounds. Now, with the Washington, on the outside looking in, I have no issues with it. Obviously, he tested out of this world. I do still see Bigfoot running down the field when I watch him play, just because he seems like he's lumbering down the field more than he is actually running. However, when we had friend of show Jacob Westendorf on, he mentioned something about there might be some off-the-field concerns with Darnell Washington. That kind of scares me because the Packers do tend to shy away a lot of times with that. There are a couple outliers. Micah Hyde had a couple of charges against him when he was in college, but that was a fifth-round pick. And then last year, Devontae Wyatt had some issues, and they took him in the first round. Maybe they're getting out of that philosophy depending on how they're seeing these, the things go around. And Jacob never really did say what the off-the-field concerns are with him, so I don't know, and I've never bothered to look. But second round, sure, talent-wise, yeah, but the red flag, if there are concerns, it kind of makes me wonder if the Packers already have him off the board. Now, I know they did a visit with him, and if he cleared their visit, then, hey, more power to him. They get paid the big bucks to make those selections. We're just, some schlubs, throwing names out there. So, but Dan, what do you think of those? Have you watched either of those guys?
I will say Darnell Washington would have probably been my pick at 45 if he had been there. He went earlier. He went much earlier in the draft that I did. Mingo, I don't know as much about. I need to buy a ticket onto Joe's hype train, and get involved with it. But I mean, personally, for me, like I did several mock drafts, like prepping for this. And then like even like as like especially as I would get like into like the fourth and fifth round and beyond, when like you kind of start to get to the point where you're like, I don't really quite know who all these people are, or like I haven't watched a lot of them.
Right, yeah.
If
Yeah,
like I get to a pick and I'm like, well, who am I going to take? I'm like, well, there's a wide receiver. I'll take them, because I'm like, if I was like the Packers and I'm looking at this draft, I'm just like, I'm gonna just take a shot on any, like, if there's a wide receiver there that I think could be, I'm just gonna take a flyer in anything past like the fourth or fifth round, because I'm just like, you need something to hit. So I'm all for just taking any kind of wide receiver prospect.
Right. And it's like I said earlier with your pick with JSN, you know, there's a lot of talent in this group that'll be available in the later rounds. And, you know, some might get taken higher than they should, but there should be enough to, I know this sounds like a weird thing to say, but there should be enough to go around for everybody. And and the way they're coming out of college now, they're more refined than they were, 15, 20, years ago, because not only are they playing football in college, but they're also going to these specialized camps and stuff like that to better prepare them for a life in the pros than normal. But Nick, why don't you go ahead and lead us into the third round?
The dreaded third round. So look, this is actually, it's a shame that we have the curse on us, because there's so many good prospects in this range. In a draft where it's almost entirely devoid of good safety prospects, I chose cornerback slash safety, Swiss Army knife, Jartavius Martin out of Illinois. I didn't get the Illinois defender that I or the other ones that I really loved, Devon Witherspoon or Sidney Brown. But I think Jartavius Martin, as that kind of nickelback safety, I think he fits into their parameters. Sidney Brown is really short for what they like in a safety. I think they're more likely to draft someone like JL Skinner, who I know Joe's all over. But I think Jartavius Martin is really talented DB. I think he will be a fantastic pick just as a nickelback to kind of alleviate some of Keyshawn's Nixon role there and leave him in that kind of dime backer role. But if he goes further, he absolutely has the movement skills and athleticism to thrive as a safety. I'm not sure about necessarily free safety, but in a room where we have Darnell Savage and literally no one else, I think you take what you can get at this point, and I think he'll be a fantastic pick.
Yeah, I mean, we talked about him earlier on in our preview, and there is something there with him. And I in a couple of my other mock drafts, I went safety because the last time we had a successful third round pick was a safety in Morgan Burnett. So maybe it's going to take a safety to bust this curse. With mine, I don't have it, but I'll let Dan go ahead and go with his third round pick. Unless you traded it.
No, I don't have one.
Oh, yeah, you traded it, didn't you?
Yep.
So I guess I will. Dan, this one will make you happy because we just talked about the guy. I went with DeJuan Jones out of Ohio State just because of the physical freak and anything like that. And, it just so happened that he fell to me in the third round. And it's like, well, we probably should go ahead and take an offensive lineman. Maybe he might slot better as a guard in the Packers system with his size. But, if he can drop weight and keep his athleticism, maybe he'll be able to do that versatility that the Packers tend to like out of their picks. But yeah, that's who I went in the third round. Although, like I said, there were a couple other mock drafts that I put together that I went safety because, like I said, the last time we had a successful third round pick was a safety. So
yeah, yeah. So you go.
Nope, go ahead. Nope, you're good.
Yeah, no, I was going to say, because I just feel like, I'm so off this safety class. Originally I kind of liked Brian Branch, but I kind of fallen off a little bit after the combine. I just feel like in terms of athleticism and size and actually playing ability, I mean, Jartavius Martin is a better safety than like almost like maybe all other safeties except for maybe 3 in this class. It's pretty grim.
Well, since Dan didn't have a third round pick, we'll go ahead and let him go with his fourth.
Well, I went safety in the fourth round here. This is good. So again, I'm getting to a point here where I'm like, I I'm not as familiar with the players that are coming off to the board. So
Right.
I'm picking more for positional need, where they like value based on where they kind of have fallen, have they fallen down in the draft? Can I get a good value pick here? And so I actually had Anthony Johnson Jr. out of Iowa State fall down to pick 116 in round 4.
That's the wrong school, Dan.
But yeah, I think again, like when I was talking about like the wide receiver thing of just like take some flyers, pick guys. I think with the Packers this year, wide receiver and safety are two positions I think it wouldn't hurt to take a flyer on a guy if they're available and you like them, because you just need bodies to kind of start filling those roles. And then also that philosophy always works with offensive linemen, I think, because you just always need jars on the shelf to plug guys in. So a guy like him that it's slated to be, he's kind of like being projected like late second round, early third round, falls down to pick 4 or to round 4. I'll take it. I'll take a flyer on him.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's not a lot of safety prospects out there as is. So if you can get one that's fallen a little bit, then you might as well take him. I've kind of flip-flopped back and forth on mine, whether, because they were both interchangeable in a way with the way my board was falling in the mock drafts that I was doing. I think I'm going to go this way and just go with my Jonathan Mingo. I mean, there's not much more I can say out of it. I've basically been on his hype train since day one. I have to laugh that it's so. We did our wide receiver episode so early on in our draft preview, and I said right in our show that he was like, him and Marvin Mims are my guys, and nobody else was on him. Nobody. Now, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying people are taking my, because again, we're a small show. We're just some schlubs with some microphones. We're not experts, but it's so funny to see everybody now on the Jonathan Mingo bandwagon. And it's also funny that I'm getting constantly tagged when somebody mentions him on Twitter, because I said I was going to throw that GIF out there every time.
I imagine there's a Back to the Future scenario where like somebody's listening to a podcast and they're like, Brian, it's your nephew, Joe Gutekunst. You know that wide receiver prospect you've been looking for? Well, listen to this.
Yeah. Yeah, it's something else that everybody's now talking about. And like Nick was saying earlier, he's getting, in some mocks, getting even some first round love out of it. And, at the point in time when we did our episode, he was literally nothing. I mean, you never saw him anywhere. You never saw any mentions. And, now he's getting all the love. And I love to see it. It's really great to see that he's finally getting some recognition out of it. So,
yeah,
that's my guy.
Yeah, they can definitely get down with that. Yeah. My guy was Zach Pickens out of South Carolina. Super juiced up, twitchy, absolutely destroyed the combine. He's a pass rusher first and foremost, so I guess kind of in the vein of ignoring run defense that the Packers do. But I think he would be great. I'm not sure if he even lasts until the 4th round, but he was when Sam came on to do the defensive lineman episode, he was one of our favorites. He was one of, if not the most productive draft eligible defensive tackles in college last year. Yeah, I just think he would be so good on this team, and just give us more juice. I mean, no more Dean Lowry. I think they have to draft someone to fill in that inside, and I just think I much prefer Lucas Van Ness as a project to the outside rather than playing inside, and I think it'd be great. Zach Pickens, Kenny Clark, Devontae Wyatt, and TJ Slayton. I mean, yum.
Yeah, you definitely got to fill spots. I mean, Lowry was just a void for however many years, and
Net negative.
anybody you would think would be able to have more production than he does. The interesting thing is what they think of Jonathan Ford. I know he was a 7th-round pick and all
Mm.
that, but they kept him on the roster all year long, so you wonder
I
what's
like him.
going on there with him. Yeah, I really did too when I started watching some of his stuff after the draft, but you can never have enough big bodies in the trenches, and so I'm all for it.
Yeah. Cool.
You want to go ahead and do your
Yeah, I'll do
next
the fifth
pick?
rounder. So my guy, second tight end, I think, me and Brian Murphy talked about this a couple of times. I think they have to come out of this draft with at least 3 different pass catchers, whether that's a combination of tight ends or, wide receivers. I think that personally they draft at least 2 tight ends, one early and one later. This is Western Dorse guy, Luke Schoonmaker out of Michigan. He's just like, he kind of projects a little bit to that H-back role, but he's just a really good blocker. He's a good blocker in space. And another one of these guys who just like obliterated the combine. I mean, so I got it here, ran a 4.65, 1.63-ish, 10-yard split. He had a pretty good broad jump, 10 foot, 6.8 on the 3-cone. I mean, wow. He's like, he's one of those guys you didn't see the athleticism always pop necessarily in Michigan, but knowing that he has that and has that room to kind of stretch and grow a bit more, I think he can, quite easily step into a role. And at the very least, he's going to be better than Tyler Davis over there. So I would love him in the fifth.
And didn't he put up pretty good number for bench press?
From what I have here, I don't think he tested, or maybe I just have an incomplete one.
Okay,
But he couldn't.
Maybe he didn't test. Maybe I'm thinking somebody else, but this was the one that I hated to even consider that I enjoyed watching because of where he went to school at. But
yeah, can you hit the little sounder
yeah,
button?
I'll do it again. But yeah, if anybody in this class is going to be similar to George Kittle, even taking, helmet scouting, and it's probably going to be Schoonmaker, because he seemed to be that all-around type guy that he could block, he could catch, he could get upfield. If he can get into the right system and they can get him going, then he's going to be a hell of a draft pick.
Yeah. Yeah, I really love this tight end class.
I'm surprised there's not one coming out of Ohio State, because they usually have 1 or 2 guys.
Oh God, it's 3:30 in the morning, and I'm blanking on who. Yeah, there's one coming out next. The guy that he's the tight end now, like the starting tight end now, comes out next year, I believe, and he'll be I think a similar prospect to kind of a Schoonmaker.
Gotcha. Dan, why don't you go ahead and give us your 5th-round pick?
So I went offense for both, because there's 2 5th-round picks, right?
Right.
Okay,
yeah,
okay.
Nick, did you give us your other one?
I'll let Nick go.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, no, totally. Yeah, totally blanked on that. My second one was my, Ross's guy, Hunter Lipke, fullback out of NDSU. I fucking love this guy. He's one of those guys I'm just like slamming the table, jumping and body slamming the table. There's no more table left. It's just, this is the guy that I want. He's like, at the very least, he's going to step in and be the best special teamer straight away. He's just like the perfect fullback. Again, another guy obliterated the combine, played for NDSU, can keep that pipeline going. He's so talented. He's such a productive receiver. I mean, as a fullback, the amount of touchdowns that he scored as a fullback was pretty crazy. And again, he plays on a team that's a run-first team. He knows how to get his nose in the dirt and just work. He could replace Josiah DeGuara, or conversely, free up Josiah DeGuara to actually play tight end for once. And yeah, he's just, this. I think I'm not sure how Matt LaFleur feels about the necessity of a fullback, but he's one of those guys who will step in and be a starter on day one, in my opinion.
The only thing that'll help him, I think, in the LaFleur system is if he can swing out as a tight end, because that's what they kind of look for more, is somebody who can play both parts of it. I don't think they're going to go for a straight out
He's
fullback.
a really good receiver. He is a really good receiver.
Yeah, if he can line up as tight end and then swing in to that H-back role, then yeah, I could see it. I mean, I like him. There's something there in him, but he's the type of guy that would have been better 15 years ago.
Yeah.
Because the fullback position, I think there's 3 teams in the league that currently have a specific fullback.
I think he's a prospect that I think if anything, he probably ends up a Patriot. He's just one of those guys, super hard worker, by all accounts,
Yes.
fantastic
Yes.
locker room presence, and Patriots one of the only teams that love to use their fullback consistently. So yeah.
Well, yeah, and then you got San Francisco with Juszczyk, and I think Baltimore had fullback at one time.
Yes.
And I think that's pretty much it for teams.
I think Atlanta might have one.
Okay, Atlanta might have one, but yeah, it would have been a lot better had he been available like 15 years ago when the heyday of the fullbacks were there. I love a good fullback.
I
love a good fullback.
Making Madden covers.
I know I've mentioned this on show before, but the last jersey I ever bought for the Packers was Danny Vitale. I love a fullback.
I thought you were going to say like Spencer Havner or something.
No, it's even worse than that. I got Danny Vitale sitting over there. But I love a fullback if he can. If it all depends on LaFleur. We've never actually seen a full LaFleur offense go. If you go theory-wise, he's supposed to have more of a tight end and a fullback type system. But with Rodgers, it never went that way. So we could all be surprised now that it's the Love Show and, he might want to go fullback. Although I'd rather have Monty Ponnebaum from Iowa than the kid that you're talking about. But all right, Dan, I think it's time for you to do your pick. Okay. Or picks.
So I went offense again on both of these. I went offensive line with 149, and I went Juice Scruggs, the center from Penn State. Nobody is a bigger Josh Myers fan than me. He's from my hometown. My dad continuously tells me about how he has beers with his family when he's out in town. But he's struggled. He's struggled to kind of find his footing in the NFL. And if you can find a guy that either pushes him to be better or is better, or, they kick one of those other guys out to play guard, they find something, find a position. I can't sit here and be a homer about it and say that you can't upgrade the center position. And I'll always take a guy whose first name is Juice. And then my second fifth round pick, I brought it back to my first appearance on the show and went quarterback and took Clayton Tune out of Houston. I know, because literally every mock draft I did, my quarterback crush Tanner McKee was going like early third round, and I'm like, I'm not spending early third. I'm not going that high for a quarterback prospect like that. So, every time I got to like the fifth round, Clayton Tune and who was the other? There was the other prospect. I'm completely blank on these other quarterback names. There was another guy that right around who?
What school?
I can't. He was basically like it was Clayton Tune, and like they felt like the same prospect, but
was
it was like
Hainer out of Fresno.
Could have been. I'll look.
That one
look at my
old
notes.
That one popped up a lot in my drafts around this time.
But basically, I kind of just for God help me, I followed Iowa Joe's advice and took a flyer on a guy that has like kind of just crazy arm talent, and so I'm okay with that. And like I said when I first came on, you've probably got to get a quarterback here in this draft. There's enough talent here at the back end that you can take a chance on somebody and hope that they pan out, do something. You got to, if you're playing as a move forward with Jordan Love, you got to find something to fill out the room there. And so I'm very happy to take Clayton Tune near the end of the 5th round here.
I can't complain on either pick. I actually got a bet going with Sanjay that if the Packers take Juice Scruggs, that I have to buy a Scruggs jersey, but it has to say Juice on the back.
It was Stetson Bennett. Stetson Bennett was the one that always it was those two that fell, and I'm like, I'm not going to Stetson Bennett.
Yeah, and he's got some issues going on right now too.
Yeah.
But yeah, I have no complaints with those two picks. I like both of them. To kind of go with your point with taking a center, I think it's going to be a necessity because right now, there's the consideration that Zach Tom could kick inside to be a center, or maybe Elton can move to center if need be. But if you take those two considerations out, the backup center is Jake Hansen.
Don't say that name.
So
Packers Nation, a collective shiver running down their spine.
Exactly. So I think there is that where they're going to have to take a center. And Juice is one of my favorite ones. I really loved what I saw out of him. So I just, at this point in time, I'd have no issues with it. Tune is another one. It's kind of funny that you mentioned McKee because he just recently had a visit with the Packers. I can't remember if it was an in-person or if it was a virtual, but he had a meeting with them. And I've said all along, even through our episode with you with the quarterbacks, I view this like the year Rodgers took over starting. They're going to end up taking one or two of them in the draft to compete as for backup, but also to be the contingent if Jordan doesn't succeed. So I can see them. I could honestly see them even going with, if McKee is there in the 3rd round, maybe taking a flyer in the 3rd round. But there's definitely going to be a need for it, and they're not going to be relying on Danny Etling or some undrafted free agent like they did under the McCarthy era. So I see the need there. I suppose it's my turn to give my picks, huh? So I went the safety route finally. And this is the one that I said I was kind of flip-flopping with Mingo because they kept falling into both picks, either 116 or 149. So I juggled them back and forth, but I went with Jamie Robinson out of FSU. Getting this late, you're kind of, to use the euphemism, the saying, I can't even fucking talk tonight. I know how you feel, Dan. You're throwing shit at the wall and hoping it sticks. Now, I'm not saying Robinson's a bad player. I personally didn't watch him too much. I know it's going to be one of Dan and I's favorite people's favorite pick, Lambeau LeBeau. So, but I have, like I said, safety is going to be a need. You might as well take a shot at him. He's got the ability. I can't remember what his RAS score is off the top of my head, but I think it was pretty good. It wasn't great? Then I was thinking of somebody else. But
safety is the opposite of tight end this year. There's like 2 that tested well, and they're both out of Packers parameters.
Then my other pick, and you could kind of see him slotted into what Nick was kind of thinking, but I think he's going to stick at the position he's listed at. I went with Evan Hall, running back out of Kansas State. I think running back is going to be a need. This guy is a hell of a 3rd down option. He's a hell of a receiving back out of the backfield, and he's a solid rusher. But when you get into the 5th round, you can't really complain about it. Now, obviously, if I had my choice, we'd probably be taking Taj Spears or Israel Abikonda earlier in the draft, but it just didn't fall that way when I was running my mock drafts. So those are my guys.
Yeah, it's funny that you say that because there were several times in my mock anyway where I had some really great running backs like fall to me, and I it's just so hard because I'm not totally out on Tyler Goodson, and if they're going to replace Aaron Jones, there's only really a few of those guys in this class, and at those spots it's like I kind of would just rather have another actual like player instead of drafting like a third or fourth running back to just sit and do nothing this year. But yeah, I mean, like guys like Tyjae Spears, like you said, Israel Abanikanda. I love Sean Tucker at Syracuse. Rashawn Johnson is kind of like another AJ Dillon clone from Texas. He's Bijan's backup. There's so many good running backs in this class, and I would expect them to kind of take one maybe later, but it's like, how much do you really need running back? It's a pretty luxury pick, especially in the way our roster is looking right now.
Well, this might not be a popular opinion with Packer Nation, but I think drafting a running back is more to replace A.J. Dillon than it is going to be Aaron Jones. Now, A.J. is a great guy. Don't get me wrong. He really is living the Packer culture. Obviously mayor of Door County and all that, all the stuff that he's doing, but he really hasn't clicked on the field. And I believe this is the last year of his contract. If it really doesn't click, I don't see him back. So they're going to need somebody to replace him. And I would like to have Israel Abikonda be the replacement. Rashawn Johnson would be a great one too. But I think this is going to be one of those things that, and with money being tight, I don't see them being able to bring back AJ unless it's like a really cheap deal. So, they're going to be taking somebody to more replace AJ Dillon than they are going to be Aaron Jones, in my opinion.
No, that's totally fair.
Hate me if you want to, Packer Nation. I've got big shoulders.
I'm 6'1". Yeah. Cool. Let's get into the last round here, 7th round. So,
yep. Obviously, there's no 6th round pick, but we got 4 7th rounders, which is just as good.
Yeah.
Who wants to go first? You want rock,
first.
paper, scissors?
No, I win. I'm already going first. Yeah, so like I really kind of like the later rounds of this draft. I actually really like a lot of these guys. The first one that I picked at 232, Jake Moody out of Michigan. For my money, best kicker in this draft. He's one of the only ones that kind of has that clutch gene, right? He nailed a 54-yarder earlier this year. This is probably like one of the worst years of his career, but he has shown that he can do it. And he plays in Michigan. It's not like he's not going to have like the playing in cold weather issue theoretically. He'll be just be a replacement for Mason Crosby, who is not coming back, it seems, which is kind of funny. He kind of posted like earlier in the offseason about being excited to play again this season, and then the Packers were just like, no. So we'll see.
Well, now they haven't completely shut the door on it. They just said that the money's a little bit tight right now, and they hope to be able to work something out with him.
Yeah, but also, I mean, Mason's cooked, man. He's done. Like, he's good for like inside 30 yards, but like, dude, you can't have a whole roster spot just for that. And if he's not gone this year, he's gone next year anyway. So it's like, what's really the point of leaving him around for a dead year? So that's kind of where I'm at. But yeah, Jake Moody out of Michigan, I think he'll be a good kicker. We'll see how it goes. It's always hard to predict with kickers. Another one, 235, center, guard, inside offensive lineman, Alex Forsyth out of Oregon. Don't believe he tested, but he's one of those guys who, is going to not sound great, but he's kind of in that Royce Newman mold. He's a real physical run defender, run blocker. Really really gritty. He's a bit of a shorter guy. I think he's only 6'3", 6'2", but I just love what he put on tape. Super physical guy. Kind of reminds me of that guy that the Lions drafted 2 years ago now. Anyway, just like, I think he's one of the guys who's going to step in and actually like play. He's a little bit more fleet of foot than some of the other guards in this class, and I think he kind of has the body type that the Packers generally look for in the interior there. So I would like him in the 7th round. At 242, I picked Jason Taylor out of Oklahoma State. He's kind of like not a special teamer type guy, but I think he can fill in as a like a run defending safety kind of as
Brian
need be.
Maffey's going to be mad at you
Why?
because he thinks Taylor will be long gone before the 7th round.
Oh, really? I didn't know that. I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, in this class, he very well could be. He's one of the more athletic testing safeties of this bunch. I mean, it's not saying much, but I think he can do some nice things as a depth piece or just a developmental kind of guy. And I think no matter what, you're going to end up with a few of these kind of straggling safeties. Whether it's one of the guys from like Miami who I kind of like as special teamers, or versatile options. But I think you're going to. I would not be surprised if the Packers draft one of these guys late. Even just purely for special teams value, they love their DBs. I mean, they're all their special teamers are safeties now. So, yeah. And then my last pick, Sean Clifford out of Penn State, the quarterback who came in for a visit today. Actually, pretty athletic, really athletic guy, and and he's a 7th round quarterback. You can't expect much out of him, but as again, another developmental piece. At worst, he's a camp body, and you're just snagging him before he becomes a UDFA. I'll be more than happy with that. I mean, 7th round, you take what you can get. It's a quarterback. It can't hurt. It'd probably be better than Danny Etling, so we'll see.
Well, actually, what's funny is I watched a little bit of Clifford, and I can't remember what team it was against, but he had a run that was very similar to the Etling scramble in the preseason last year. So it's kind of funny that you said he'd have to be better than Etling, and it was very similar to Etling. Now, other than that, he's kind of inaccurate, but he's got an arm, so if they can rein that in, he'll be pretty solid. Like I said, Taylor's an interesting prospect. Maffey, because I had him taken in a late round in one of the drafts I did like weeks ago, and that was one of the things Brian said was that he didn't see him being that in those later rounds. Forsyth, I don't know anything about other than taking an inside offensive lineman from Oregon kind of scares me after the Jake Hansen debacle.
He's good.
And
This guy is good.
And Moody, spoiler alert, he's my last 7th round pick for my mock draft. So, nice. But again, like we were kind of talking before we started recording, we don't know much of the special teamers that are coming out this year. So the only name that most of us knew were Jake Moody. So that was pretty much the pick. Dan, why don't you go ahead and do yours, and then I'll wrap it up with mine.
Sure. Yeah. I sort of wish now I could go back and look at my available at the pick, because I completely forgot about Jake Moody when I got into the 7th round, because everything you said is right. Like I would even as an Ohio State fan, I would love to have Jake Moody come in and just continue the Mason Crosby 20-year solid career of having a kicker that can just do whatever you need him to do for 15, 20 years. So my first pick at 232, I went wide receiver. I took Jake Bobo out of UCLA.
Nice, yeah. I
know absolutely nothing about any of these picks here at this point, so I'm just again wide receiver. I'm picking to throw pass catch. I want pass catchers. So give me another guy. I liked the bits of the UCLA offense that I got to watch this past year, so I'm hoping that translates a little bit. And again, at 235 here, as I've been looking at this, I'm like, again, I wish I could go back and see what I had available, because I'm like, what was I thinking when I made this 235 pick? Because I picked linebacker I think it's Michael Jones out of Syracuse. Or Mikel Jones out of Syracuse,
I haven't watched
inside linebacker. I haven't either. And so I'm curious about what my thought process was when I picked a middle. I mean, I do think that
cool name.
If there is a middle linebacker prospect that you like later on in the draft, if that's available, it's sort of like the running back position to an extent, where it's like you don't really need it at the moment, but it's like if you maybe center's the better one, because if Quay Walker or Devondre Campbell go down, there's not a lot of depth behind there that you're like, I would trust him to just come in and immediately be, somebody. So I think, again, I like taking defense later on in the rounds, because those are your special teams guys usually, and so I like having those kind of players. My last two picks at 242, I went two Alabama guys. I went defensive lineman DJ Dale at 242, and then I went another safety at 256, DeMarco Hellmans at 256. So again, just give me some guys to throw out there, some bodies.
They're both cool. They're both cool.
Yeah, I like it.
Bobo, I watched a little bit on, and I'd have to look to see what he did for a 40. But when I watched him, he kind of looked like he maybe needs to transition to tight end more than wide receiver, because he didn't look like he had a ton of foot speed. But again, I don't know what he ran. I can't remember off the top of my head. The other three guys I know nothing about, so I'm just going to say good job, Dan.
Thanks, Dad.
So I'm going to go with mine, as we get bombarded with messages here at 2:30 or 3 o'clock in the morning. My first one at 232, this one Nick's going to kind of like a little bit, but he just kept falling here. So I took him, was Josh Weil out of Cincy, tight end. Yeah. Why not take a chance on him? 235.
I grabbed him in a couple mocks too. I like him later on too.
Yeah. 235. This guy right here, I'd have to go back and look to see how old he is. I think he's a little bit on the older side for a prospect, but taking him here would be fine. But I love this guy. He spent a couple years at Iowa, and they really misused him, and then he ended up in Purdue and being like one of the top receivers in college rankings, and that's Charlie Jones.
Yeah.
He's going to be more of a slot type guy, but he's got all the ability to do everything. But like I said, I think he's a little bit, because Purdue's like his third or fourth college team he's played for. He started out at Buffalo, he ended up at Iowa, and then he ended up in Purdue. And I can't remember if there's one in between Buffalo and Iowa, but he's got the ability. He's got special teams experience. So I'd have no problems taking him. Now, I probably should get the button ready for me too, but it's kind of weird that I have this player here, because Dan took him earlier on, so I'm trying to think what my draft board ended up being, or my stuff was when I took him, and that's Anthony Johnson out of Iowa State. So I don't know if he fell that far or what was going on there, but I was doubling down on the safety picks, and then obviously my last pick is Jake Moody, just because, again, Packers are going to need a kicker, and he's the only one that I know the name of. I know a couple colleges that are producing him right now, but he's the only one that I know name of. Yeah. And that's it. Are there any preferred undrafteds that you guys thought of while putting your stuff together, or anything like that, or guys that you really wished you would have taken, but you went a different direction?
Yeah, I mean, the guy that Dan drafted at safety, DeMarco Hellams, I'm not sure if he'll go undrafted. I mean, it's hard to say a guy's going to go undrafted, but he's one of those guys that I think would be really cool to pick up. He's a little bit more on the athletic side. I think this Green Bay will do what Green Bay does best, and is pick up a bunch of these O-linemen. Kind of, I don't think they're going to be drafting more than one offensive lineman in this draft. With how many bodies they have there, it's like 15 offensive linemen on the roster.
Yeah, but the Packers every year take at least 2 in every draft. So depending on what they are setting out with picks, it's a possibility.
No, for sure. I think they will draft at least one, but I don't think they're going to be doing like, what was it, like three a couple of years ago? I don't think they're going to be doing anything crazy like that. But I think, yeah, when it comes to undrafted guys, I think they pick up a few more flies on tackle, definitely a couple safeties, tight ends, just get bodies in there and just kind of see how they go. But I'm not as deep into it as Brian is, pulling out all these like random guys who he thinks are going to be UDFAs.
Maybe
I'm
next
sure
year.
I'm sure he could give you a list of like 30 people who we would love to take as a UDFA.
Maybe next year when we're more established and we have the time to sit down and go through all the prospects.
Yeah.
So first off, before I get to my wishes, Cade Stover is the tight end I was thinking of from Ohio State. He's a senior. He's a senior this year. He'll be. I think he'll be one of the top guys in next year's draft. Yeah, I sort of mentioned it when I started my 7th round picks. I wish I had thought to grab Jake Moody because I don't think he's going to go undrafted, and I think he's the kind of kicking talent that you don't want to have to hope you can recruit as an undrafted free agent. I think he's the kind of guy that it's worth to spend the pick and guarantee that he's going to be yours. The other thing that I wish I would have done is I wish I would have addressed the running back position at some point, because there was a couple of times there was the running back out of UAB that would pop up in like the 4th and 5th round, and I'm like, do I want to try to take that? He's kind of like this guy. He's a little bit undersized. Like he's had some injury history, and obviously like playing at UAB, like what's he going up against? But yeah, that's one position I wish I would have been able to address a little bit earlier on, because I do think that might become a position of need very, very quickly if they don't play it right. So
yeah.
The only thing that I wish I would have fit in is maybe a quarterback, because I didn't even go with what I through my draft. I didn't have any quarterbacks taken with the one that I just talked about tonight. Now, like I said, I have 4 other ones that I think I took a quarterback somewhere, but my feeling is, and will always be until the draft comes, that the Packers will take at least one somewhere. But
yeah,
it's been a fun draft preview. I've really enjoyed all the guests that we've had, Dan especially. It's about time we got you on board. Too bad Mike had to drop out with some technical issues. We were hoping to really have a action-packed super show for you guys, but it just didn't. Technical issues always hurt. But Dan, appreciate you. I think Nick will wrap up a little bit more, but I just want to say I appreciate it, and all our other guests. If you guys are listening, we appreciate everybody that came on and joined us in the draft previews, and I'm ready for the draft to hit and see what the Packers do.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, thanks for coming on again, Dan, especially on such short notice. We really appreciate it. Thanks again to Mike. I know he's probably listening back on this, or in the ether. He's getting my sidekick waves, but I always appreciate him coming on, even if it was only for 5 minutes. Is there anything you guys want to talk about quickly or plug before we finish up?
No, we'll give Dan a chance to plug, because I know he's always working on some stuff.
Yeah, I mean, well, you can find all of my stuff at DK All the Way on Twitter. That's where I'll plug anything that I'm working on. Doing some writing for Wisconsin Sports Rogues. That'll pick up as the season gets closer, as well as Lombardi's Bar. That'll kind of kick into high gear as we get closer into training camp and preseason and all of that. And then you can also catch. The episode will be out way before this one airs, but Joe will be joining me and Aaron on Watching Stuff, the Star Wars side of Watching Stuff, as we break down episode 8, The Last Jedi.
Unfortunately, I'm still having PTSD on this shit.
Yeah, that one's gonna be rough. We've had a guest on for each of the really, really bad episodes. So Nagler came on for a Attack of the Clones, and so Iowa Joe is doing his part and coming on for Last Jedi.
Should have been last movie. But no, it's going to be a fun conversation. I really look forward to it because I always tell people I have two major hobbies or loves in my life, and one's Green Bay Packers and the other is Star Wars. And I always, people always ask me stuff, and it's like I basically own all kinds of every one of the books from the old expanded universe. I'm a walking Wikipedia, according to some people. So. But yeah, it should be fun. I look forward to talking. Dan, again, appreciate you. We'll let you go here pretty soon so you can get some sleep. I'm feeling the same way you are right now. So, we got the Aussie over here who has no idea what we're talking about with this. But
it's chilling.
The last thing I do want to mention is don't forget to go check out my buddy Wes's website, Hoyda Original Artwork. Go over, get you a pencil drawing, or he's been dabbling with some color drawings and everything else like that. If you're interested, hit him up. If you need to figure out how to get there, let me know. I'm more than happy to let you know. And he's reasonable priced, and he'll get it to you as soon as he can. So go ahead and go check him out, Hoyda Original Drawings.
Hell yeah. Awesome. Well, as always, guys, you can find us on Twitter, myself at NicholasGRGR, Joe at Iowa_Joe86. You can find Mike, rest his soul, at Kawano Mike. You can find Dan, like you said, at DK All The Way. And finally, the podcast at Outback_Packers. Until next time, I'll see you later.